All right, I wanted to just recap a pretty easy textbook trade from the chat room today, and this is in INFY, and then I'll talk a little bit about some other calls. It was a really slow day, but INFY, if you watch the watch list video I sent out last night, this was on there, okay? You had the gap up and the red close. I talked about, RMTI doing the same thing. You had the gap up and then sold off all day, but then the next day it was strong. Now this isn't exactly the same thing, but let me go back to INFY. It wasn't as powerful as RMTI, but it was the same theory, if you will, that the sellers got a hold of it on the gap up day, but the next day you might get a bounce. So I'll add today's candle in now. It doesn't look like much. Pretty narrow green candle. Had a gap down, which I actually like more than if it didn't gap down. But let me show you how I called it today in the chat room. Okay, using 5-minute candles. You can see here, this is yesterday's gap up. That's where yesterday's high, I should say Friday's high. And it did what I really want a bounce play to do. Okay, it put in a nice narrow range for the first couple hours. All right, so you had this nice narrow range. Typically, our entry would be if it breaks the high of the day, okay? Because the sellers won on an intraday basis on Friday. Then you had the gap down, but you basically have a battle all day long in a narrow range. You get above the high of the day, you're probably going to get the sellers from this morning to cover, maybe some of yesterday's sellers to cover, maybe some longs jumping in saying, hey, INFY is going back up now after that gap down. I'm sorry, after that sell-off, after the gap up on Friday. And so typically I'm going to take this on a high of day break, 45.91, but it's set up better than that. I'll zoom in a little bit now so you can see. Here's the high of day. It was climbing up and then puts in this red candle. Okay, so sellers come in, and my idea was just what they call an RBI, a red bar ignored, over this red candle. In other words, if these sellers fail, we're probably going to get through the high of the day. So it gave a pretty low risk setup. I went ahead and called this at 45.81. I'm sorry, over this candle, 45.82, with a stop a dime below. And there's the trigger. And the reason I picked the stop, I just picked the stop the low of the trigger candle. Okay, so 45.72. And next thing you know, 5 minutes later, we're at the high of the day. Little narrow candle, and then we're through the high of the day. And this thing just kept climbing and went ultimately to 46.44 is as high as it went. I can pan out now. But stayed up there. Stayed up near the high. So that was just an easy trade on a dime risk. You had stacked catalysts, right? You had the seller failing, and then you had the other catalyst of a break of the high of the day. Fairly narrow range as far as the daily range went, especially compared to Friday. So it was just an easy trade, and it was textbook. I mean, everything was just fell into place. I'll go over a couple other calls from the day today. Let's see here. ALL. If you've watched any of our videos, you've seen us talk about Tokyo trades. It's just a nickname for a type of trade. See this volume spike here? I jumped on the mic and said ALL, and look at you get the nice green candle. You still got the high of day way above still. So I like these high volume pushes that are coming off a low of day base. So I went ahead and called ALL over the mic as a Tokyo trade. And I believe it was 50.88 actually when I saw it. So what does that mean? I just grab it right there at 50.88. My stop always goes below the 5-minute candle where the volume started. Okay, so 50.88 entry. Stop was only 15 cents below right there, 15.70 or 50.73 I think. I'll take the arrows out of the way, and we ended up getting through the high of the day from there. And that just shows the benefits of running a volume scanner and knowing the setup and knowing how to trade it. It ultimately went to 51.28, but again, an easy trade. Just all you had to do was be there to make the money on that one. Osman K called Sienna. That's what it looked like on 5-minute candles. Osman K is one of our all-stars in the chat room. There's the early high, and then it kind of grinding higher. And yesterday's high was right there. He just called it long over yesterday's high. 21.82 was the entry, and there's the entry. Stop's going to go below the previous 5-minute candle, 21.68. So from 21.82, it wasn't huge, but you know what? It went to 22.20, and you can see from the entry, never underwater. So a really nice call by Osman K. Overall, it was a slow day. You can see the SPY on a daily, and I put this in the daily wrap-up video for our members too. Look at the candles inside of that circle. You know, you can see the color, you can see the bodies, you can see they had some size, and then look at the candles really over the past week and a half. You have gaps, but then you have these unbelievable narrow ranges. You've got pretty darn low volume here compared to recently. So this is textbook vintage summer trading, if you will. And so you've got to be selective, and that's what's so good about the chat room. People scanning together and posting, you know, pointing out, hey, there's some volume coming into XYZ, or and that's important because you don't want to nickel and dime yourself to death when the market's not really moving. I mean, these gaps, you could say, well, it's moving higher, but on an intraday basis, that is not, see these candles? That is not typically good day trading type candles because you don't have a lot of movement once the market's open till the close. So there you go. A couple other calls I made, SCTY. I called the other solars were very strong. I just called it long, I think at 44.24. Another Tokyo, see the volume? And my stop's going to go at 43.90 or right below that candle. And it ultimately went to almost to 45. I ended up making this making money in this twice in two different trades, but it never did hit the original stop. RKUS, I called long right about here on this base break and ended up taking about a 4-cent loss in it. Then I jumped back in again. I was really looking for a breakout of this one. See another Tokyo, and ended up killing that one flat. RKUS was pretty tough. UNXL I called early on, and I was up about 20 or 30 cents. I called it long right there, and then within 5 minutes I was up 30 cents. And I said to myself, hey, I think I caught one here. So rather than take some off the table, which I almost always do when I'm 20, 30 cents up, I said I'm going to let this one go. And next thing I know, I killed it for a dime loss because it didn't continue. And that's a nasty one because look what it did. Then it ripped through the lows of the day. Then it rips back through the highs of the day. So that's the kind of stock I'm going to avoid in the future. Anytime you see that kind of action. But I did lose a dime a share on that one. Overall, between ALL and SCTY, had a couple trades in KNDI that both worked. ADT, Serendib, one of our all-stars, I believe, called ADT at 43.30. I think right about here with a dime stop at 43.20. And you can see that one went up to 44.56, a really nice call by Serendib. And I had a small gain in WLT. I'm not going to go into the details of all of these because really I just want to start my evening. So trying to see if there was anything else. I think Osman K also made another call on GMCR, but since I don't have the numbers in front of me, I'm going to quit babbling, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.